Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're talking to Anil. Anil, welcome to the show. I'm happy we're doing this.
Thank you for having me here, Varun. It's a podcast that I've heard and enjoyed myself. So very excited to be here with you.
That's so good to hear. And I've been excited to kind of talk to you on this podcast because when I look at the kind of work that's happened in the last couple of years, especially with what you guys have already put out there, there's a serious shift from what was, I hate to use the word traditional creative, but I would say traditional thought process of how we look at creative to really bringing in so many aspects there. But before we get into that, I thought I'd kick off by asking almost from a macro point of view, what have you seen really evolve in how brands tell stories, especially over the last couple of years, from a broader perspective?
I think, if I were to, just pardon my gray hair, so I'm going to go a little bit more.
The gray hairs on both sides here, so I think it's good.
There's a little bit. If I were to go a little bit back, the arc is one where basically Varun is going from one platform where we could, broadcast a single message for everybody to a situation where I'm able to have a two-way conversation which is personalized, right? So that's really the journey, and we are just seeing chapters of that unfold. And somewhere down the line in that journey, what's happened is that what began as an innovation or what began as a way and mean to experiment with a platform or a product on the digital environment, we are now getting to a situation where both from a consumer standpoint and from a brand ecosystem standpoint is becoming par for the course. So I think that's the kind of the much broader shift. And in terms of chapters in those shifts, I think in the most recent 2 to 3 years, Varun, I think as I see it, in many of these kind of industry interactions or interactions with people, I've seen the needle go from being medium, scared of the medium or unclear of the medium or saying that, look, I can't measure stuff, to now saying, it is integral to the way we need to build our brand messaging or build a brand per se, right? And once that penny has dropped, then what's really happened is both brands and consumers have really started to figure out what are the multifarious ways in which we can interact with each other. I think kind of the democratization of this has happened as against, a classical model where there's a product which is being sold by a platform and then, it's then getting monetized by a set of agencies, which is then being leveraged by a brand. It's kind of a very linear process in which the industry works, right? That's kind of gotten disrupted. That's gotten democratized. And hence, it's almost becoming, what we see in the context of a consumer journey is being completely disrupted. Even the brand messaging development journey has gotten completely disrupted. So you're moving from an idea to an execution which doesn't follow the standard, the same old kind of a process, right? Same thing has happened in many other parts of development, including tech, including business strategy, including businesses themselves. The same thing is happening in brand storytelling. Maybe it's been the slowest to adapt in some ways, just because of the way the industry is structured. But today what I'm seeing is a dramatic switch in the way people are picking up ideas and bringing it to people. And that's kind of become the new base. And and over a period of time, marketers, agencies, brands are now getting more comfortable to say that is all that matters is the idea and the way it reaches the consumer. It's become actually in many ways much more simplified. You don't have to worry so much about what are the constraints of the medium, or what are the constraints through which I should think about, or which are the filters through which I need to plan. All of that has gotten disrupted, which in many ways are self-applied constraints, right? Because of which a lot of limitations have come in the way brands tell stories. So that's where we are. Maybe it's kind of, I don't know if it makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the most interesting parts about while you're talking, I was thinking about is that what's also where it's also gone is I feel that, and I'd love to get a point of view, is that I feel the switch kind of happened when implementing an idea which with technology became far easier, because before it was always like, okay, how will this even work? I think there was a period of being stuck in the how, and the how felt so overwhelming that you almost like felt wary to try it. In many ways, the implementation part of how tech can actually be a core part of it, how digital became almost like a core part of every aspect of it. I feel that's really made a bit of a shift, and I'd love to get a broader perspective on that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, again, in the how do I do this? Again, has two levels, right? How do I do this? Just to think through the basics, to say, so what's the mechanics of it? And then finding a partner who can do it, right? So I break it down into two stages. In some cases, even the mechanics becomes a constraint. So to say, for example, to say that, okay, I want to make an ad for every single retailer, right? That's what we wanted to try and aim in our, not just a Cadbury ad. In the latest version that we did this year, we said, I mean, the whole context was small and medium retailers are small and medium enterprises, especially our traders, the trading community, the stores, traditional stores, aren't anywhere close to what they would want their business to be. And even this year was the same situation. And that was the core idea, right? How can we help? And then there we said, okay, last year we helped them by making them visible in our advertising. And we said, okay, let's serve it from a geolocation standpoint, customized so that everybody in their own pin code sees their local retailers. That was great for the consumers, but it's still not adequate enough for the retailers. So we said, okay, what can we do to the retailer? We said, what if we can make an ad for a retailer? Now that's where this how bit I was trying to unpack, to say, so what does this mean? And how do we really unpack it a little bit more? How do you give it a little bit of structure so that then when we get to an expert who can solve, he or she already knows, okay, I understand. Okay, now I know how my tech can help you. That's that shake hand has to happen. In many cases, the distance is huge. So quite often, and it is still needs to evolve much more, because quite often that how actually the tool doesn't exist. The tech is being built. Maybe it doesn't have scale. You need to learn as you go. You know, to experiment, right? So I often find that the answer in that how sometimes stops, because people feel, okay, iska to solution nahi hai, this technology doesn't exist. But actually what you have to say is, okay, let's talk to people. Let's do a few things. Let's try a bunch of things. Maybe it'll be small today, but it'll be big tomorrow. We never had that notion in storytelling, right? If you think tech, and that's the interesting notion when we think from an organizational perspective, when we talk about digital transformation, right? And the simple notion, but it's very difficult to fathom, to say every company is a digital company, right? But you say, how can digital transform a company? You're almost holding it as a distance away. You're taking, say, I am a digital company, so I need to keep thinking about this. So I think this notion to say, okay, this is the new reality. This is the new domain. So let's not say, oh, there's a tool that doesn't exist, that technology doesn't exist, so we can't do it. Let's say, how do we do it? Okay, now that you got this idea, let's assume that I can create and serve one ad for everybody. Let's assume that we can do it. Now let's go talking, let's find out who can. So I think that the second how is the more interesting how for me, Varun. I think the initial how, I think people are still doing a bunch of things, because the second how is also unlocking a lot of interesting ways of working, a lot of capabilities. Large scale brands like ours, you never want to experiment, right? You always go back and tell our vendor ecosystem, partner ecosystem, to say, don't get me a small idea. Get me when it is big. And to change that to say, okay, let's talk, let's do something, let's start from scratch, let's bootstrap. We never had that notion, right? So I think those are the ones that are extremely exciting, actually, to say that we're now in that space, that we can also operate at that speed. We can really play around, experiment with. And I think the other bit around this, Varun, that has changed is the ability to get feedback. I mean, quite honestly, if you had, 10 years back, I was experimenting with media at a much junior level in marketing. I was experimenting. It's not that we weren't experimenting, right? We're doing a lot of experiments. We were innovating. I think what's changed is now our ability to measure, our ability to come back and say, okay, you know what? I know that this is going to get to this scale. That knowledge, that measurement that ability to kind of capture that is also becoming very important, because then when I send my team out, they don't come back and say, boss, you send me on a wild goose chase. I mean, all this is cool and sexy, but my real value is going to come through that 30-second spot on television. To challenge that, to shake that up, has taken time. It's taking time as we speak, but the change is here, and that's what is making it very exciting.
I'm taking a couple of things from what you just said, and I love the fact that you said we shouldn't talk about how do I become digital, but you're innately are saying I am digital as every company, and that's one of the best ways to take it. And I think that makes total sense. But the other thing I also got was, as you're getting these things done, is one is to also like start small, experiment, and then scale it out. Is almost a tech practice which you're bringing to every other form of what was traditionally called creative, but I think everything is tech now, because I'm sure you and I have used the word stack a lot more than ever in the last 1.5 years. I keep joking that we're a stack business now. Everything is a tech stack, everything is a creative stack. And I think the other aspect which I'd love to get a perspective on, because you always function with multiple teams, right? You have to do something which is, let's say, experiential. You have an experiential team. You want to digital, there was a digital team. There's all of that. Now, this requires all those teams kind of work together seamlessly, because at the end of the day, you get the best effect when you get that together. How do you make that work? How do you, because when I look at the campaigns, it seemed seamless because it just had that impact. You know, you were seeing it shared on digital. You also saw that there was actual impact there. So how do you kind of stitch that together and balance what are almost like multiple stakeholders?
I mean, I wish if there was an easy answer to that, and I wish we could, if we could structure it, because then it'll help everybody, right? We're still a little bit of a distance away from that, Varun, to be quite honest. I think the way we are able to stitch it all together is by having a strong ecosystem, right? So on the client side, on our side, I think the big switch is exactly following through the same notion, right? That we are a digital company. So every marketer is a digital marketer. So I don't believe, and we don't hence have a digital marketing team, right? We don't have, we're trying our best to, anyway, we always believe that we need to have brand teams, and the research and the insights partner is part of the team, the analytics partner is part of the team, the media partner is part of the team, even the sales guy is part of the team. So the brand team had always felt holistic, end-to-end, take ownership, execute, and also measure results. So we all know that, the sales guy doesn't feel that these guys are doing some crazy innovation, doesn't move my sales. They won't work, right? True. So we always believed and had the notion of having integrated brand teams. But in the context of digital, hence it's become very important that everybody, we wholesale upgrade the digital expertise of the organization. And that's a journey. The first step in that is to acknowledge that everybody has to upskill, including myself. Once you do that, it's a journey. I mean, so for example, we're still far away from the performance side of things, right? We're still in the top of the funnel, mostly at the top of the funnel guys. Now, for us to believe again, to say that, look, no longer can I say that I am the top of the funnel guy and, bottom of the funnel needs to be taken care by somebody else, the e-commerce team, the sales team. Today, it's us. And when we can do it, why will you not do it? No, then we see that the performance side of things is a completely set of different tools and capabilities, right? Now we need to upskill there. So I think it's a long journey. And the answer lies in keeping it organic. So we have to keep it organic because, again, if you get hierarchical there, then you'll follow a process. If you follow a process, it just slows you down, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Who receives the brief, and then, there's a hierarchy saying that the, advertising agency receive the brief first, then pass it on to the media agency, then it goes to never works. So I think we are incredibly grateful, and we do take a lot of time and effort to ensure that we in-house bring lots more of our partners onto the table. We're very happy that Facebook, Google, Jio are now like part of our group. Now we do feel that there are another set of so-called consumer tech firms, smart tech firms, ad tech firms out there. I wish we could bring many more into the table. It's kind of it's that part hasn't evolved. But what's happened well is we have access to WPP now in a holistic way. Even WPP has realized. So the network has realized that I can't operate with a single nodal point. It just slows everything down. We also can't monetize it. Right? I mean, everybody needs to benefit from it. The moment you have a network kind of a view, the same point that I was making, the idea to execution,
Yeah.
Just the brief goes to multiple people.
Yeah.
So that again kind of helps in opening this up. So I think having kind of an organic, that kind of Brownian motion kind of a setup you need. So, and by virtue of that, obviously it is organic, you can control it beyond a certain point. You try and say, okay, let me put a boundary around it. But the outcome of that today, Varun, is that, our marketing teams are extremely stretched.
Yeah.
You ask any of them, they'll say, I'm going mad. I just can't manage that. I wish, and I look back at my brand marketing days, right? I launched a campaign, I could go on long holidays and come back after 6 months, by which time the first read would have come saying, so many...
Seems unimaginable today.
Unimaginable, right? So I think, it is incredibly complex. I wish there was an easier way to do it. I think what's helping is the network. That was my kind of long answer.
Do you also see that technology is kind of helping on that part to almost like automate the pieces which kind of reduce human tasks? And so kind of, because if I look at something like the Shah Rukh campaign, right? Just that activity that kind of happened. What I found great was it's great use of technology, because oftentimes I felt that, and this is like, if I look in hindsight, a lot of times technology was used to say, okay, we've used technology. It was almost like, okay, things felt like gimmicks. This felt like, okay, this technology helps make this better. It doesn't require, I can't even imagine how many takes you would have had to do if you actually had to make him do it, or how much time of his you would need. Is the answer tech? Is the answer kind of technology going to help at least kind of maybe not reduce the load, but reduce the repetitiveness of the functioning?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely does. And it does two things, Varun, actually. I mean, your question could be very broad to say, are there a bunch of things that can get automated in general for what a marketer does? And I think headline there is yes. And all said and done, I would say that it'll be kind of a 70-20-10 kind of a model, like everywhere else. But the 70 can be massively automated. So when I have an annual strategy, the 70 is kind of getting fixed. And that as the 70 is getting fixed, that 70 can be easily automated. And that automation also has inbuilt some amount of AI/ML. So it can adapt itself to the needs of those, whatever changes. So if there's a COVID happens or a wave 2 happens, I don't have to do manual interventions. I can regulate that 70, and it can auto-regulate in that sense to a certain level. And hence, I didn't have to agonize at the end of every month that did my brand have the kind of reach that the team had promised to, and what delivered and what didn't deliver, and hours that we used to take to do that. All of that has gotten automated, right? So I think the 70 is getting automated, and hence there's a lot more time for the 20 and 10, which is really the thinking, and the 20 is what I would say the stuff that needs active handholding adaptation, and the 10 is the one which is completely new frontier. You don't know whether you're going to be able to land it at all or not, kind of a space. And all three need to kind of exist. Then 70 is getting automated. What's happening because of the automation of that 70 also is you're releasing a lot of time, unproductive time. So that's again a broader point to say, as a release of that unproductive time, you're actually able to spend time to make that 20 and 10 better. One of my efforts over a period of time has been to ensure that how much can we make that 70 consistent. And just to demystify the whole thing, if 70 was my key brand message, agonize over it and land it, and have your key assets that land at 70 work very well, and simplify and make it more consistent and make it more long lasting for a longer period of time. Otherwise, the problem was we had a lot of time and we kept playing in that 70, kept changing the messages, adding 3 more messages. Okay, I have this particular promotion or this particular activity, this new launch. And for every time I keep splitting from that 70 and creating a lot of work. It's also going back to some brand basics in that sense to say, how do I ensure that there is consistency of a certain level where the consumer is also receiving a set of consistent messages. That's the 70 that I'm talking about. So it's a combination of automation And also going back to marketing basics, it's bringing you back to marketing basics in that sense. Otherwise, as my boss quite often jokes with me to say that, the more people you have, you create more work. And in marketing, it's always very difficult to say, when does something get over? When do you start something new? And how many messages do I need? And kind of a stuff. And the 70 is actually, because now I have strong modeling, I know till when the 70 is going to last, and we don't need to double guess ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think, so those two notions I wanted to unpack in your question.
And kind of look at this from the entirely opposite side, right? While the machinery, and I think that's the word to use, machinery to kind of create all this, not just automate, but to also do these campaigns there. The consumer also in many ways has evolved, right? How the consumer, from everything from how you how you connect with the brand, how you connect with the brand's content or creative, or how you purchase, everything else has kind of changed. Especially over the last 2 years. I hate to use that two-worded term which starts with new and ends with normal. But how have you seen the consumer evolve in recent times, and just like from what they expect from brands and how they want to be connected with by brands?
I think the relationship between brands and consumers, I don't think has changed pre-COVID and post-COVID, Varun. I don't think, I mean, if somebody were to say that it's changed, then I would call him or her complacent. Because the expectations that we have with our brands and the richness of the relationship we can have with our brands is well established. We don't need to, it's a well established subject. I mean, you would have, we all would have read tomes about it. I don't think there's any change. I think the one big thing that has happened in the new normal is the fact that consumers are spending much more time in the digital medium, and there is profusion of content. So there's profusion of content and more time spent. Undeniably, that's gone up. And then the set of activities that I'm comfortable doing in this platform has also gone up. So I'm doing more things in the platform, so spending more time, doing more things, consuming more content. Those are the three things that have changed. And as a result of those three things, the relationship has to be reset between brands and consumers. Right? I think that's the broad kind of the meta kind of observation from my end. Of course, there is much greater desire for brands with purpose. There's a greater desire with brands where there's a clear point of view on sustainability and the planet, etc. But I think I would suspect that existed pre-COVID as well. Yeah. So I was saying that. So obviously, I was talking about the three changes that I saw post-COVID, which is people spending more time in the digital medium, comfortable doing multiple activities, and consuming a lot of content. Right, and hence, how does a brand engage with consumers? How consumers engage with brands? That has gotten reset, and we need to reset that. And I also said, while there are trends like brand purpose and sustainability, empathy, that's all kind of have emerged, I would suspect that those existed pre-COVID as well. I mean, that is the point I was making. The third point I was going to make is that possibly the new normal is also a great thought experiment or a test for what the whole marketing ecosystem is to call topical marketing, right? Or moment marketing. I think it's an extended experiment in moment marketing, which has kind of made consumers and brands acutely aware of woke behavior. And I think what will get called out as an outcome of these last 18 months is that consumers will much easily spot woke behavior, where people are being opportunistic. People are leveraging the moment to do a few things which helps them or their business.
Not going deeper at all, just doing surface.
Yeah, absolutely. And the moment you go that, snap, and and I would say that it's an interesting moment of discovery that happened, that the brands had to jump in. Those that didn't have a point of view earlier, they had to jump in, so they didn't have a choice. And now they feel that they've become activists without realizing that unless it's a clearer link to their core, to what they've said before, or to what they clearly want to say if they've changed course, and really build conviction, do something beyond just messaging. I think it's an interesting piece, and it's evolving beautifully in India. It's calling out people who are not doing a good enough job. it's just making us also more disciplined as marketers and brand custodians. That's what I mean. That's possibly again a very interesting thing that that I'm seeing come through.
I have a bunch more questions, but I know we need to go for a break. So, I'm going to quickly just do that. We right back with Advertising is Dead. Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We still talk to Anil. I want to kind of turn this towards what I feel a lot of our listeners really want to know is that, okay, I'm at a certain stage in my career. What do I need to kind of know about what modern marketing teams would require from me as a professional? Or rather, like what do you look at for people in your team? What do you look for in your in your partners' teams? Saying these are the kind of people we want to work because this is what the modern marketing landscape requires. What would those skill sets be? What are those? What are the traits of the people in these teams be that you look for?
Interesting question, right? And I think I would possibly right upfront say that I might disappoint you and the listeners if you're expecting like these set of exciting tools and skills that you can just go and pick up, or that there is a modern marketer is hugely different. I think to keep it very simple, Varun, it remains a place where we are looking for people who can problem solve in a non-linear way. I mean, that's the simplest part. And that problem solving in a non-linear way requires a certain orientation, ability to connect the dots, ability to engage with data and people, and have an approach. Again, some of these words that have been abused a lot, but having that kind of mental agility to learn, unlearn, experiment, have the passion and joy to build rather than just participate. I think those notions remain the same. I would just say that I was always been excited by what we could do in marketing 20 years back, and that excitement still exists. So and when I look at the skill sets, it remain the same. Possibly what's gone up even more, because I'm seeing it from a journey standpoint, what's becoming difficult for people who've been in 5 years, 10 years, is for them to look back and say, okay, this is what marketing is. This is what I've learned, and this is how I'm going to do. Rather than saying, yes, this is what I've learned, but let's look at the future and say, so what do I learn from the future? How do I keep the consumer at the heart, look at that ecosystem, then say, what do I do there? How are things changing there? Because things are changing there, how do I adapt myself? So you're looking for people who can, who have a growth mindset. So the famous fixed versus growth mindset, who have a growth mindset, willing to learn, who willing to jump, have a fear. Obviously everybody has the fear of the unknown, but also feel the thrill and the rush to jump in and experiment. Obviously have to be comfortable with data today. I think data is becoming a very, very incredibly important part of marketing. So that's the other bit I'm sure you have unpacked in your podcast in the past. In as much that it's getting more obsessed with the idea and the art, is also getting equally empowered by science, right? So if at all the good old cliche of art and science is getting even more activated on both sides. So I think multifaceted and both kind of the balance of the right and left brain. So we try and do a lot of work with our marketers to get them a sense of where they are on the right and left side. And if they are high on the right side, how do they get some left skills, and high on the left side, how do they get right skills? Is the way we're looking at it. And Varun, the second thing possibly which is becoming very important, and maybe we're just seeing the arc come now and it'll go in for the next 3 to 5 years, is a very, very strong orientation towards business. And I think as you're seeing the founder mentality, right, and we've always called it within the organization, every organization is its own word, we call it within our organization an ownership mindset, all right, which is from a 2007-8 in the mid 2005s to 2015, the 10-year period, marketers were very obsessed, and most organizations were moving towards becoming global, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And marketers found themselves in these beautiful ivory towers, managing global brands and thinking this is what brands is, and this is what branding is supposed to be, etc., etc., and distant from business. The second cycle was all about the P&L and managing margins. And the term was ZBB, zero-based budgeting, and all companies were focused on protecting their finances and coming through the economic cycle. In the last 3 to 4 years is when growth has come back. We're back in the growth cycle, right? And in the last 5 years, as you're seeing now, what's happening in the startup ecosystem, the power of a founder and the way they're able to build brands, right? And the speed with which they're able to build brands. I think that's kind of upending and bringing in this whole business ownership mindset. Very, very importantly, bringing marketing again very close to the business. It's a very exciting time to be again back in the marketing because it's no longer theoretical.
Yeah.
No longer subject matter experts, but because of this data, it's bringing business so close to the brand. It's making it very interesting. So that's the second skill we're looking for: ability to work in business, a commercial mindset. Clearly rolling up your sleeves and ability to deliver boxes if that's required, kind of a mindset, which is very important.
I love that the 2 points you picked up was data on one end and business mindset. I think that oftentimes people assume marketing to be something that I think the data part is still there, but I think the business part in many ways, like you said, that it kind of went away as an area of focus. It really has come back in and really pushed it forward. I actually want to ask you, this is like a random segue, but is this what you set out to do in your career when you started off? Was this what I'm really excited by from day one, kind of built from there, or has that evolved over time?
It's I don't want to digress too much, but
no, please digress. Podcasts are meant to digress.
Till the time I got to, from the day I joined Cadbury, I think it was quite clear. Right? How I got to Cadbury is a story in itself, it has all kinds of moments. So I had completely unclear from my education what I wanted to do. Right, so went into undergrad doing engineering. I was very, very early on knew that I didn't want to do engineering, but to spend a lot of time studying
One
and
more
preparing.
Person who had the exact same problem is on this podcast. Did a very excruciating mechanical engineering degree on my end, but
there you go. So 2 excruciated mechanical engineers are exchanging a Saturday afternoon podcast. So right through engineering were not clear, but by the time we were ending, I knew that I wasn't going to go into research or into the sciences any further, and business was calling. But even within MBA, again, the mistakes that you make through the academic system, right? You want to finish your academics, as my parents used to put it. Khadam kar lo. You're getting into postgrad without a single day of work experience. Yeah. What do you know the difference between marketing, finance, HR, sales? These are just subjects. These are just books. Yeah. So I think definitely because of my inherent skill set, I could sense analytics was good. It was easy for me. So supply chain, operations, finance, I could do it. But there was something in marketing and in brand building that excited me, made me feel that I had a creative side in me, which I thought it got fulfilled. I like to work with people and knew that I couldn't work on a desk. Kind of took me towards marketing. But it was completely serendipitous. Right? I ended up in Cadbury. I almost signed out in my the famous Russian roulette that's called campus placements. Oh. I was signed off and I had informed and announced to my parents that I'm joining HSBC, and it's all done. And just thanks to my friends who knew that possibly I was more cut out and possibly who had a little bit more sense than me to guide me in the right direction to say, what are you doing? What are you going to do in a bank? I'm mad about. And that's how Cadbury happened. And then in that sense, the rest is history. Because from the time I came in and also had the incredible luck to miraculously fail spectacularly and yet survive, right? So I've had some spectacular failures earlier in my career, but as I live to tell the tale kind of a thing. So even quite often what happens is you tend to get comfortable because you're doing something well, So you don't forcefully ask yourself, is this what you want to do? But when you have failed a couple of times and you say, boss, is it really what you want to do? I say, no, this is what I want to do. I'm getting another chance. So let me work on it. So I think from then on, it's been quite clear in that sense. I mean, as clear as you can get, to be honest. But I mean, and I think especially in the last 5 years, I just feel that it's just the excitement has come back manifold in terms of what you can do and how you can build big brands. It does feel like a big watershed moment.
I couldn't agree more. It's just been so much more exciting just because the possibilities are now endless, right? What you can actually do and what all you can build on top of that. And that you give me a great point to go to my next question, which is that as you look ahead, what are you excited by? What are you excited by seeing? Just in terms of possibilities, what are you looking at as, okay, these are trends for the future which you are excited about? Obviously, what I've loved about some of the things you said is that the fundamentals will never change. And that will always be core to it. But what are you excited by beyond that?
Yeah, I think, let me try and frame it so that I don't do a random response to that. But what am I excited by? I think the excitement is in how engagement is getting more and more disrupted in many, many ways. That remains a huge point of excitement. And every brand, every business, every ecosystem would figure out that there are a few of these that they haven't cracked yet. Right? For example, you've done a few experiments in audio, but we haven't cracked audio yet. We think that we can, so much more we can do in audio, right? There could be, again, as an organization, I feel that we haven't done much in short video. There's so much more I can do in short video, right? Just when we were trying to get used to the TikTok system, it went away, and then we're still not, we're not comfortable with the kind of the brand safety situation and some of the others that exist. Eventually, it'll get sorted out. Now you think about, how do I have a brand? It stands for romance. What can I do for short video? I mean, just think about it. And the other excitement is, content creation, right? I mean, just the way content is getting created. I mean, gives you sleepless nights on one side, but also makes you excited to say how many people I can collaborate with and what can I create, right? So how can I shape? It just, every time you think about an idea, I mean, the good thing is you need an idea. If you have an idea, it's every time you think about an idea and say, okay, what can I do about romance? Then say, I mean, today you can dream much, much more fearlessly, and that's what excites me a lot. So I think the way you can engage is changing, and there are many, many different opportunities. The opportunities seem endless, and just the way we were reaching the end of, or not end, reaching a kind of a scale outcome in this offline to online journey of brands, right? Is now opening the gates of the metaverse, right? And what the metaverse has to offer. And you can almost think about creating a parallel universe, right? So in the spirit of saying, oh my God, I don't know what this is, let me wait, to say, wow, what can be there and what can be
also
done.
To use romance over there, like it feels like there's so much can be done.
So much can be done, absolutely. Now, one of the things that we've struggled as a company, not as a company, as an industry in this area, in digital so far, has been impulse, right? So they say, there's a famous, phrase that says that Twitter resulted in the death of chewing gum, right? And this whole notion that now an impulsive act is solved by a tweet or a post or whatever, and hence, how do I, whose business depends on impulse, and I go to a store, I see a Cadbury, I pick it up. There's no store, I mean, that's gotten completely disrupted. Checkout has gotten disrupted on the online medium. And now again in the metaverse, I can recreate impulse.
So true.
And it could be a massively exciting moment in terms of what we can do. I mean, of course, already the potential that you're seeing, the kind of ideas that you're seeing, we just know that it's out there. So hence, I think just that excitement of things that are going to get created and how that will help brands engage with consumers. I think that's one thing that excites me. The other thing that excites me, Varun, is, and I have been a cynic myself, and I still find quite a few cynics around me, or not just cynics, maybe also how do I call them? Certified practitioners, or people who have, who are really in the academic space, who then come back and say, you know what, brands can't solve purpose, so brands can't solve consumer problems of the world, brands can't save the planet. You're here to sell your next chocolate, you're here to sell your next sneaker. You manage a business and F off from here. And who are you to come and give gyan about purpose? You're woke. What do you know about purpose? You're building factories that are polluting. I think all of those are getting upended. And because of the nature of engagement brands are doing, meaningfulness in itself has gone up. How brands can be much more meaningful in consumers' life has gone up. That's also the fundamental reason why some industries are getting disrupted, right? Where people are saying, I have a very, very clear point of view of what a personal care product looks like, or what a baby care product looks like, what a good snack looks like. And I don't care. I mean, I'll start something on my own because I can do it. So I think the meaningfulness of a business, and hence the ability to impact, to me, I do feel, is a big one. And now, if it was quirky entrepreneurs or crazy CEOs like the Danone CEO, Emmanuel Faber, who was the Danone CEO, famously said, I'm not going to report any more quarterly results, and I'm going to look at only the long-term goals, and I'm going to cap the CEO salary, and I'm going to do specifically some things for purpose. Or the CEO of Patagonia and his point of view on fast fashion. They were still on the fringes. I think it is going to get more and more into the mainstream. Right? Just recently finished reading Indra Nooyi's book. She's written a book of My Life in Full. My Life in Full is a book. And there she talks about, as a Pepsi CEO in 8 years, how she created a portfolio of products which she believed were much more acceptable as a permissible snack, or a health and well-being product, right? For a company that is selling Pepsi and chips. So, I mean, it is getting more and more mainstream, and brands are becoming more and more meaningful, are going to play more and more meaningful roles in consumers' life. Isn't that exciting? Then you can change a life. I mean, that's possibly the second most exciting part. One is you can really engage much more deeply, and you can still look at ways and means to get stronger. And the other is you play a much more meaningful role in consumers' lives. And this interesting point. I'm just building on this. It was a very existential point we had just at the beginning of wave one, COVID wave one. As we were all focused on getting supplies back, right, the government took a staged approach on how to open up supply and open up factories, and they created this whole thing called essentials and non-essentials. Here, essentials lagenge, non-essentials nahi lagenge. You're later in the queue. Let's prioritize essentials. And this whole domain was, aap kaise essential ho gaye? What is the chocolate? Why is the chocolate essential in a consumer's life? Essential means sabun, roti, dal. And for a few weeks, we said, yeah, that's true, man. Even in my life, I don't need a chocolate. I need a bag of rice. But very soon in that period of time, the way, firstly, the belief to say, boss, there has to be meeta in our lives. I'm not going to step out. I have a child to manage. We're not going to sit here and worry about and kill ourselves worrying. We need a moment of break. We need to make ourselves happy. I need a drink. Right. So you quickly realize that you need this. This is part of your life. And he said, okay, fuck. No, this is part of my life. It is as much of an essential, maybe not the most, but it's as much. It is integral. It's not frivolous. And through that, then when the business came back, Varun, you realize that. And we said, okay, we have a role to play. Maybe have a different way. Let's
and a very important role in that sense, if you look at it.
And then bring it into the front. Say that you celebrate at home. Don't forget that there's a birthday coming up in September. Just because it's wave one and you're locked down, don't forget to celebrate a birthday. From then on to say, everybody's being generous to each other. There's a wave of generosity towards people who are out there, frontline workers, etc., etc. Let's be generous. Let's do something about it. Let's not just talk about it. Let's do something about it. Then suddenly you realize, look, as a result of our actions in the last 18 months, we are doing really well. We are exiting this year growing over 2019. We are exiting this year feeling very excited about what our brands can do. More importantly, our marketers are excited that I can do meaningful work. No longer to say, boss, abhi ye friendship day mein na hum purple hat karenge to friendship day ka maal nahi bikega. That's gone.
Correct.
So I think that's my personal reflection, and I've gone through the journey myself. And of course, in our portfolio, we have also equally exciting brands like Oreo and Bonvita, which can do even more meaningful stuff. So if you have a portfolio of brands, I'm sure anybody who has a portfolio of brands will find brands which can do something really meaningful.
I think you mentioned a lot of really important points. I think there's a lot to. I think, and I think the one which I take the most away from this is the purpose one, right? Is that often brands have looked at you just a brand, but I feel there's a power to it because you are building persona, you're building character, and in many ways when you amplify that character and persona, that people kind of also connect with something which they themselves are like, right? Something which they need. It's that emotional connection that comes from a brand. I feel there's so much that can actually happen through that, and it also gives me a great point to come to the most random part of every episode because you've given me a great line to finish off all the what you just said for me is like a great way to kind of say this is like almost like you have that showstopper finale to a conversation, and you just given me that with what you said. But this always ends with a segment that has nothing to do about work, and so it gives me a great opportunity to flip it towards this. It's so series of questions which have nothing to do about what we've spoken about so far. It was initially started off as me trying to do rapid fire. It has never been rapid or has or any form of fire, but beyond what you do at work, what keeps you what do you spend a lot of time doing that people would be like, really, that's something you're really interested in or excited by? What's your activity beyond work that you really obsess over?
A few, and nothing that, and I'll cover a few of them which may not be new to the audience or may not be new to you as you've heard. And let me cover that first, and maybe add one quirky one at the end. So the ones that kind of drive renewal for me or make me excited is, so I'm a long distance runner. So running is an integral part of the way it helps me think, helps me clear my mind, helps me achieve, push myself, etc., etc. I love to cook, and cooking allows me to be in a state of mind where I am focused on an activity, giving my all. I love to cook for people, cook for my family, cook for friends. That gives me a lot of joy. I read, I listen to podcasts, I love music, and all of them fill me up with gives me a lot of perspective, etc., etc. One of the things that we are three, me, my wife, and my daughter. So this is a quirky bit that really keeps us excited. The three of us excited are board games. And obviously, it's a way, our daughter is growing. She turns 14 in a couple of days. And typically single child houses have always struggled to find ways in which our observation is that single child houses tend to play together. So that's been our way, and we've also with some good friends of ours discovered some new games that we played over the last 18 months. They're really nice. And the latest board game that we're playing is a board game called Wingspan.
Okay.
It's a very interesting game. Again, it's a competitive game. You have to collect points. The maximum at the end of 5 rounds, the person who has the most number of points wins. But it's got multiple levels to it. And basically, it's to do with birds. You collect birds, collect eggs, build nests. Just good fun. So that's one of the things that gets us competitive and stay connected at home.
It's interesting you said that because so we're also like I have one daughter, she's 4.5, and I think I've seen the transition of the last year and a half of her wanting to play physical board games over something on an iPad. although she seems to make up her own rules in Snakes and Ladders and Ludo at this point of time, I'm letting her make up those. She decides when a snake works and when a snake doesn't work is how she's playing it. I'm just letting her do that right now. But I agree, board games are amazing. It's like a huge comeback. I've seen so many more people play board games in the last 2 years. It's been crazy.
Some really interesting board games. There's Wingspan, there's Catan, there's Splendor, there's Risk, beyond the normal ones, which are really nice. Good fun to play.
You mentioned that you listen to podcasts and that you also mentioned Indra Nooyi's book. Anything you've read, watched, or listened to recently that you would recommend?
All three. So read recently that I would love to recommend is Humankind. It's a book that talks about kindness, and it's a Danish author. It's become very popular. Beautiful book. Upends this whole exact opposite last 50, 100-year narrative through economics, science, and sociology, the fact that human beings are inherently selfish, and upends the whole notion of it and says actually they are inherently generous and kind to each other. And how at times of crisis, media actually sells the wrong part of the story, and how actually we need to look at how can we nurture kindness, how can we make the world a kinder place. That's a beautiful book that I've read earlier this year. The other very interesting book is a book called Ride of a Lifetime, which is the story of Bob Iger. Oh my God, what a book. Talk about impact a man can have. At the right point, making the right decisions and transforming a company, right? Can you believe it? Amazing. Saw 14 Pigs just a week back. I'm sure it's on everybody's watch list. Nim's Pooja's story. Oh my God, that's again a brilliant one. The podcast that I'm recently liking a lot is the High Performance Podcast. Because I like to read, I love sport. I follow sport a lot. So I love the kind of sportsmen that they cover a lot. I mean, one of the co-hosts is also closely linked to Manchester United, which is a club that I follow. That's how I discovered that podcast. But then ended up. So I loved that. I also listened to this podcast called Pivot. You would have heard of Pivot. So
yes, of course. Yeah.
So those two from outside India. Within India, of course, it's a host of them, which I kind of in my car whenever I skip and play. And yours is also one of them. So
that's so nice to hear. Since you mentioned you were a runner and that you mentioned this, there's a podcast which I love called the Rich Roll podcast. Rich Roll was this ultra marathon runner who at the age of 40 decided he wanted to run an ultra marathon. He was an athlete who had just kind of like let himself go, and at 40 he decided to do that. He ran by 42 he ran for 4 ultra marathons in 4 days, something like that. Like he managed one of those, like hop from island to island to do it. So he's got a great book, but his podcast is nice. It really talks about everything from like all the topics you've spoken about, like from like kindness on one end, but also talking about just like running is a core part of it, but he connects that to many other pieces. So you might find that interesting if you check
the Rich Roll podcast.
Rich Roll podcast, yeah.
Make a note of it right away.
What can you put together in an instant?
What can I put together in an instant? A PowerPoint slide.
Weirdly, I haven't heard that one in a while. This is a question that has been asked since episode 1, and I haven't heard this as often as you would expect. This is one of the ones that hasn't come up in that often. People somehow end up going towards some usual suspects, saying cup of coffee, make some noodles, all that stuff. And I think my last one is generally a spin on the name of the show itself. But actually, I want to ask you for once, and I haven't done this in a while, why do you think advertising will not die?
Why do I think advertising will not die? Interesting one. Why do I think I think the reason advertising will not die is I think we are a social race, and as a result of being a social race, we always look for help. And when we look for help, we need voices that we can trust. And that's the role that brands can play. So that's the reason. And advertising is just the way, is the technical word for brands communicating with people. So that's the reason it will not die.
Thank you so much, Anil. It's been fabulous to have you on the podcast. I did not even realize we have spoken for close to an hour, and I'm super kicked we could do this. Thanks a ton for coming on Advertising is Dead.
The pleasure is all mine. It was nice chatting with you, Varun, as usual.
IVM